Hello there, you beautiful people! My name is Willow, and welcome to another Fallout 4 challenge run. My last run, with only grenades, was difficult, so today we're gonna take on something similar while we find out if I can beat Fallout 4's survival difficulty with only heavy weapons. Before we get into the run, let's lay down some ground rules. I can only use heavy weapons to deal damage. I must play the entire game on the survival difficulty. I can't use any bugs or glitches on purpose to exploit the game. I can only use visual mods, which will be shown on screen, and I cannot use console commands for anything but fixing bugs. With the rules of the run laid out, let's take a look at the challenge itself. The biggest hurdle in this run is going to be the early game, as there's going to be a distinct lack of ammo, and I don't really have a strategy in mind for dealing with that. Nevertheless, I'm excited to take on this challenge. Oh, also, I'm banning the use of VATS and the sneak perk for this run. I write these scripts as I go, and this part has been written prior to beginning the run. If you want to skip past my starting thoughts and get right into the gameplay, skip to the timecode on screen now. With them gone, let's dump some info, starting off with what I'm banning in this run. In my recent runs, I've been banning power armor, VATS, and the sneak perk, but with this one, I feel like power armor fits too well thematically, because a lot of the heavy weapons in the game look kind of silly when used without power armor, so in this one, I'm only banning VATS and the sneak perk. Moving on, I want to take a look at the weapons available to me in this run, starting with the junk jet. I'll be brutally honest here, I am not excited to use this weapon. It is arguably one of the worst weapons in the entire game due to it being very buggy and inconsistent with a relatively low damage output. But it has one thing that will make it a critical weapon in this run, and that is ammo availability. It is damn near impossible to run out of ammo with the junk jet, as it fires junk which can be found in every nook and cranny of the Commonwealth. Moving on from the junk jet, let's take a look at the minigun. This weapon is mostly limited by its lack of ammo supply at the lower levels, so early on, I don't expect to use it very much at all. But once the Brotherhood of Steel enter the Commonwealth with the Pridwin, I should be able to get a decent supply of ammo, and it's going to turn into a workhorse weapon for us throughout the run. Overall, I see this as a decent and reliable weapon that I plan to use from beginning to end. After the minigun, the weapon options become increasingly harder to obtain. There's things like the missile launcher and Fat Man, which are great, but after my grenade run, I'm a bit tired of blowing myself up, so I'm not going to focus on these. There's also more niche weapons like the broadsider, flamer, and harpoon gun, but I don't plan to go out of my way to obtain any of these. So instead, I want to talk about the end goal as far as my arsenal is concerned in this run. The Gatling laser, which is the ultimate late game weapon of Fallout 4 in general. It has insane damage output, and when combined with the nuclear physicist perk and repair bobblehead, it also has incredible ammo efficiency. I'm even considering heading to Nuka World to obtain the never-ending Gatling laser known as Eternus. With that, we've covered all of the weapons available to me, and I think that's enough talking. Let's jump right into the run, but make sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying these videos, as it really helps their performance in the algorithm. I start the run in my pre-war bathroom, where I craft the heaviest of gunners. I then go take a load off on my living room couch and watch the news before a strange man rings my doorbell and asks for all of my personal information. I then proceed to give him my name and special stats, which are 7 in strength for carry weight and the heavy gunner perk, 1 in perception since VATS is banned, 3 in endurance for a bit of tankiness as well as the life giver and toughness perks, 7 in charisma for trading and speech checks, 8 in intelligence so I can get the nuclear physicist perk after using the Your Special book, 1 in agility because you can't outrun Bullet, and 1 in luck because who needs luck with an arsenal this big? After telling this weirdo all about myself and my family, I have to go calm down my son by spinning his mobile before trying to convince my wife to go do naughty things in the park. Unfortunately though, I'm cut short by, the end of the world. So I decide to do some sick parkour through the neighborhood before reaching the vault platform, where I watch a pretty explosion go off in the distance and ride the elevator down into Vault 111. Once inside the Doomsday Bunker, I take a short walk over to the frozen food section and spend a few hundred years there, only to watch my wife buy a farm before deciding I actually don't want anything from this grocery store as it's infested with roaches. I avoid the roaches, but nearly die in the process before picking up an Apple Watch from the checkout counter and making my way to the elevator, where I decide that my heavy gunner isn't quite heavy enough, so I beef him up a bit before riding the elevator to the surface. Once I enter the Commonwealth wasteland, I make my way over to Codsworth and tell him that we'll search the neighborhood together before heading into Sean's room and using the Your Special book to put a point into intelligence. I then wait for Codsworth to kill off all the bloatflies before running around Sanctuary doing the standard early game setup of getting water production and a bed, as well as scrapping items for crafting and gathering stuff to sell later. After dealing with all of that, I make my way over to the Red Rocket truck stop where I meet a cute doggo and cower on top of a car while the doggo kills the nasty mole rats for me. I then venture into the mole rat infested cave underneath the Red Rocket in order to grab a fusion core before running away from the mole rats before they can hurt me. At this point, I'm getting a bit tired of running away from every enemy, so I decide to go over to Concord and get my first weapon of the run. I then climb to the roof of this church so I can parkour my way onto the vertibird atop the Museum of Freedom. Once atop the roof, I shove the fusion core we got earlier into the set of T-45 power armor and take the minigun from the vertibird. With my new goodies in hand, I jump off the roof, leaving Preston and the gang to their fate, before heading over to Trashcan Carla, who I trade with. After trading with her, I try to intimidate Wolfgang at Trudy's diner, but I mess it up and end up having to gun down the drug dealer and his bodyguard before trading with Trudy. I think now's a good time to talk about my biggest worry for this run, which is going to be ammo for the minigun. Ultimately, it comes down to the fact that I have 1,300 rounds of ammo to last a 25 level gap. It's quite honestly like trying to spread way too little butter over a piece of toast, and I decide I need to address it immediately, so the next thing I do is head over to the Cambridge police station to obtain my next weapon of the run. Upon arriving there, I watch Dance kill a ton of ghouls until I can speak with, though I'm dead. Whoops. Didn't know the ghouls could get me there. Either way, I go through all of that again, and this time I don't end up dying to the ghouls and get to speak with Dance, who needs me to go with him to ArcJet Systems to get a whatchamacallit to shove into his thing doer. I agree to help the metal man and head inside to save, but while I nap, I decide I should head over to Diamond City to do some trading before going through ArcJet with Dance. I reach the main gate and attempt to bash Piper with my minigun to skip all of the dialogue, but end up dying before I can lower my weapon? Oh well, we all make mistakes, let's try again. Really? Well, maybe it's me using the minigun to bash. Let's try punching Piper, and what the hell? Okay, you know what? If the game wants me to listen to Piper's dialogue so bad, then screw it. We're all gonna sit here and listen to Piper argue with Danny.
What do you mean you can't open the gate? Stop playing around, Danny. I'm standing out in the open here, for crying out loud.
I got orders not to let you in, Miss Piper. I'm sorry. I'm just doing my job.
Ooh, just doing your job. Protecting Diamond City means keeping me out, is that it?
Yep, we are really doing this. We're listening to all of this dialogue because the game oh so badly wanted us to.
It was all lies. The whole city's in a tizzy.
Ugh. You open this gate right now, Danny Sullivan. I live here. You can't just lock me out.
So, how's your day going?
You want into Diamond City, right?
I just got here, but yeah.
Did you like and subscribe yet?
What's that? You said you're a trader up from Quincy? You have enough supplies to keep the general store stocked for a whole month?
Well, why the hell not, you beautiful button-clicking machine? Go do it!
You gonna open the gate and let us in, or are you gonna be the one talking to crazy Myrna about losing out on all the supply?
Jeez, all right. No need to make it personal, Piper. Give me a minute.
Better head inside quick before old Danny catches on to the bluff.
And done! Finally, I can head inside Diamond City and trade off nearly everything I own before returning to the police station to join Dance in his crusade against the Commonwealth. Dance and I then head off towards ArcJet Systems, and along the way, he kills some raiders that I get to loot, as well as a pack of dogs, which is really useful as I get a lot of meat for cooking. After that, I enter ArcJet Systems and watch Dance mow through a ton of synths and turrets. It's always like watching a freight train blow through a car when you go do this mission, as Dance just dismantles the chrome domes until eventually we reach a rocket testing room. Once inside the rocket room, I decide to jump up to the room above so I can grab the Fat Man, and I end up dying to the 2 synths that spawn here, as they are too tanky for my minigun to kill them before they kill me. So I end up going through all of ArcJet again, only to realize that the synths don't spawn unless you walk fully into this room, so instead I just grab the Fat Man and make my way back down. Once I make my way to the utility room of ArcJet Systems, I grab the Junk Jet. This weapon is garbage, pun intended, as it has very low damage output and is difficult to aim, but it has one feature that is going to make it a mainstay in this run, and that is ammo availability. There's more free ammo for this gun than any other in the entire game. It's nearly impossible to run out of things to fire out of the barrel of this thing, and that's going to make it very useful to me, as ammo is my biggest concern in this run. With the Junk Jet obtained, I turn on the rocket engine, which kills all of the synths fighting Dance and gives him a nice suntan before we ride up the elevator to the control room. Once there, we fight our way through some more synths, and I try out the Junk Jet only to get hit by some lasers and run away to cower behind Dance. After waiting for him to kill all the synths, we make our way outside, and Dance makes me an official member of the Brotherhood of Steel. With a new weapon in my arsenal, I feel like I should upgrade my 2 guns, so I head back towards the Red Rocket, and along the way I encounter some raiders, which I gun down in a satisfying way with the minigun before reaching the weapons workbench, where I upgrade the minigun and Junk Jet with sights, which will hopefully make things a little bit easier. I then make my way over to the robotics disposal ground and find the Mark IV SentryBot prototype and its control holotape. I use the holotape to activate the sentry and wait for it to kill off all the mole rats in the area before activating the self-destruct program so I can loot 2 fusion cores off it, bringing me to 4 fusion cores total. I've also leveled up a few times, and in one of those level ups I took the nuclear physicist perk, so that combined with this small stockpile of fusion cores makes me comfortable enough to go grab that set of T-45 from Trudy's Diner and bring it back to Sanctuary, where I upgrade a few of the power armor pieces and paint it with a sick hot rod paint job. With my freshly pimped out power armor, I make my way over to the Corvega assembly plant because there's a bobblehead on the roof that increases fusion core efficiency, which I really want. I start fighting my way through the raiders there, and the combat isn't very difficult, mostly thanks to the power armor just being insanely good against these early game raiders. It gives me enough durability to be able to ignore the fact that the Junk Jet misses constantly, even with well-aimed shots. I fight my way to the roof only to run into a bug with the Junk Jet where it locks me aiming down sights and prevents me from firing. And right before I'm about to die, I find out that firing a shot in VATS fixes the bug, and because I'm going to be using the Junk Jet a ton, I'm going to allow myself to use VATS to fix this bug instead of just rolling the dice and hoping that this never happens again. Instead of describing my next attempt, here's a montage of my first successful combat encounter with the Junk Jet. With the bobblehead obtained, I make my way over to Diamond City and do more trading, which leaves me with 10 fusion cores, and I think I'll be able to comfortably do the rest of the run in power armor, which is super great, and it's the first time I've been able to do that this early on in a run. Next up, I head over to the Boston Public Library and grab the intelligence bobblehead before watching the robots kill all of the super mutants. I then head over to Park Street Station and start my assault on the vault. The combat here was rough. The junk jet is incredibly inconsistent, as some shots will hit fine and others will just wildly miss. I end up eating a ton of damage to kill off each triggerman, and in general I'm struggling with the limitations of my weapons. Luckily though, the power armor is working a charm and keeps me from dying. I do end up switching to the minigun for specific sections of the dungeon where I feel the junk jet won't cut it, but by swapping back and forth between my weapons and taking each engagement very slowly, I managed to kill off all of the triggermen and reach the room where Dino's talking to Nick. I was a little bit worried about Dino, so I decided to just use the minigun to mow him down, and it worked a treat. I then save the Metal Man detective and start making my way out of the vault with him. Overall, this section was mostly me watching Nick do all of the fighting to conserve ammo, but I do take some pot shots with the junk jet. Once all the triggermen lay dead and dying, I make my way over to the confrontation with Skinny Malone and manage to pass a speech check with Darla to avoid combat before speaking with Nick outside the subway station. He tells me to meet him at his office, but that sounds boring, so instead I make my way over to Good Neighbor, where a man in some leather clothing with a pipe weapon tries to extort me as I'm wearing a full set of T-45 power armor. You know how they say there's a thin line between bravery and stupidity? I think we know where this guy falls. Either way, I watch Hancock kill this poor sap before heading over to the Redford Hotel, where I speak with Rufus and agree to get him a new brewing machine from a basement in a pre-war bar. With a new goal in mind, I head out of Good Neighbor and make my way south, but it's here where my ADHD gets the better of me, and I realize that we are really close to the Atom Cat's garage, so I make my way there instead. When I arrive, I witness a couple of Atom Cats drag racing their power armor? Oh my god, this is brilliant! Oh my, I want nothing more than to see a Fast and Furious style movie right now about people racing power armor. Just imagine a dude in a set of T60 racing another guy in X01 power armor for like pink slips or something, and then the dude in the set of T60 pulls out a fusion core with the NOS energy drink logo on it, and all of a sudden is running way faster. It'd be so amazing. Alright, I'm completely sidetracked. Where were we? Alright, we're at the Atom Cat's garage, and we are speaking with Zeke, their leader. His dialogue is honestly quite good. I really enjoy it. He reminds me of a mix between the Tunnel Snakes from Fallout 3 and the Kings from Fallout New Vegas. Either way, he tells me to go speak with Rowdy if I'm looking for work, so I go speak with her, and she asks me to go to Warwick Homestead and install a replacement part for their water pump. So I head over there and do just that, installing the part before speaking with June Warwick, who thanks me and sends me back to Zeke. I speak with Rowdy and Zeke, and he says I'm Atom Cat's material, but halfway through our conversation, the garage is attacked by gunners. I help out in defending against the gunners using my trusty junk jet, and after an intense bit of combat, things die down and I get to speak with Zeke again, who praises me while a car blows up off screen and we hear someone screaming. He then tells me I'm a friend of the Atom Cats and gives me an Atom Cat's jacket, and it's at this point I've decided I'm going to run full Atom Cat's power armor for the rest of this run. I don the jacket and jeans Zeke just gave me and then head over to Rowdy, where I sell everything I own but the junk jet in order to buy a full set of T60 Atom Cat's power armor from her. With the objectively coolest power armor in the game obtained, I feel I should go and get that brewing machine for Rufus, so I head back towards Diamond City, only to die to some Mirelurks right outside the Atom Cat's garage. Yikes. That was a little bit embarrassing, but going at it again, I make my way to the pre-war bar where the brewing machine is stored, and it just turns into a chaotic mess. There's a ton of Mirelurks chasing me as I run into the raiders defending the bar, and I use the Mirelurks to kill off most of the raiders, but then I'm stuck fighting the Mirelurks myself, including a legendary Razorclaw. Luckily though, Todd Howard has the same philosophy as Chris Taylor from Supreme Commander when it comes to pathfinding. and this makes exploiting a very small change in elevation a viable strategy for never getting hit by a mirelurk. So I spend a long while throwing everything but the kitchen sink at them through the barrel of the junk jet, and eventually they fall and I get an incendiary pipe pistol before making my way inside the bar, where things don't get any easier. The combat with the raiders is tense and honestly quite rough due to my inaccuracy with the junk jet. I end up missing a ton of shots and these raiders are just constantly whittling down my HP, but I do get a saving grace in a level up which I use to take the Nerd Rage perk, which really saves my bacon as it activates multiple times as I struggle through these raiders, eventually felling them all. I then make my way into the basement only to find a bunch of mole rats which nearly end up killing me, but through the clever tactic of running away and firing the junk jet wildly, I managed to kill the overgrown rodents and survive to fight another day. I then spend a long time confused about how to get Buddy out of his pod before my live chat tells me the password to his terminal is up on this shelf. With that, I activate Buddy and return to Good Neighbor to sleep in the hotel until he arrives there. I then speak with Rufus and collect my reward, and as I'm leaving the hotel, a chatter in my live stream donates $1 for me to adopt the Vault Tech representative. So I go back upstairs in the hotel and send the Vault Tech rep to Sanctuary before heading over to Lexington because the junk jet is running low on ammo. I end up having to fight through a decent number of ghouls until I find the Lexington Bank, where there's over 120 pieces of pre-war money, and this is an ideal ammo for the junk jet as it has no weight, so I grab it all before heading over to Diamond City. Once there, I immediately head up to the mayor's office and cheese getting Kellogg's house key by invading the personal space of this guard and lockpicking the secretary's desk when she isn't looking. Once I have Kellogg's house key, I make my way over to Valentine's detective agency. Once there, I get interviewed by Nick and tell him all about my missing son and dead wife before we head over to Kellogg's house and find his cigars and booze, which I can use to let Dogmeat track him across the Commonwealth. So I give Dogmeat the cigars and then ignore him, making my way out to Fort Hagen on my own and kick off this rampage of junk jet violence by killing off some radstags before getting some absolutely sick snipes on the roof turrets, which I was very proud of. Just look at this, I can't even see what I'm aiming at and I'm nailing all of these shots. Anyways, I enter the fort and start fighting my way through the synths and defenses, and the combat here is really tough. The junk jet is just not reliable in these close quarters as hip firing is basically useless. I end up using the Nerd Rage perk alongside Kims like Psycho to barely limp from room to room for most of this dungeon. My power armor is also a huge saving grace as it keeps me in the fight for longer, and I also run into another weird bug with the junk jet in regards to these ceiling turrets. Simply put, the junk jet for whatever reason just fails to deal damage on almost every shot. Rarely it will work properly and actually deal damage to the turrets, but most of the time I'm resorting to VATS to kill them, and even then it's inconsistent as VATS will either just not fire or miss a 95% chance to hit. It's really just a pain to try and kill these, and it's down to the game not working properly, so I'm not counting using VATS here as a failure of the run. With that out of the way, I bash my way through all of the synths and turrets slowly but surely until eventually I reach the armory of Fort Hagen, where I grab a fat man and a mini nuke. I then make my way to Kellogg's room where he's expecting to talk with me, but that's pretty cute considering what I just picked up. I instead show him what it's like to be divided in Adam's holy glow before using the junk jet to clean up the rest of the synths. I then steal everything from his corpse and read his diary before heading out to the roof of Fort Hagen, where I watch the Pridwin arrive in all of its glory. Once I'm done admiring the floating behemoth, I make my way over to Diamond City and speak with Nick and Piper, where it's decided that Nick and I should go to Dr. Amari and Good Neighbor so we can go frolicking through Kellogg's memories. Instead of joining Nick and heading straight to Good Neighbor, I make my way over to the Cambridge police station to speak with Dance, who introduces me to Halen and Reese before telling me to get on a vertibird with him to ride over to the Pridwin together. I hop on the odd flying contraption and ride over to the Zeppelin, where I listen to Maxon monologue for a while before meeting all of the crew of the Pridwin and checking out Proctor Teakin's stock, and I am elated to find that he sells 5mm ammo in large amounts. This is wonderful, as it means as long as I get another minigun, I can finally stop using the junk jet so much and switch over to using the minigun as my primary weapon. But before I go off to get a new minigun, I decide to go over to the power armor given to me by the Brotherhood and remove all of the mods from it so I can transfer them to my Atom Cat's set of power armor. With that done, I head out to the flight deck and speak with Maxon, who orders me to clear out Fort Strong. And for the first time in one of these runs, I get to board this vertibird and do this quest the way it was intended by using the side-mounted minigun to kill off the behemoth at Fort Strong. I do just that, and even kill a legendary super mutant while I'm at it, but I end up dying extremely quickly after the vertibird lands, and this has convinced me that I need to stop using the junk jet. It's just not powerful enough to carry me further into the game, so I head off towards Good Neighbor, and along the way I stop at the USS Constitution and speak with the lookout who inducts me into the Navy. I'm not going to do this right now, but we will come back to it later. I instead make my way over to this back alley in Good Neighbor where I speak with a ghoul woman named Bobby through a slot in a door. She offers me some work, and I'm feeling short on caps, so I agree to take the job. I then head into her basement and get told to dig with some other guys in this tunnel. I go join them, but they bail out on me after finding some mirelurks are infesting the area they just dug into. I use my trusty junk jet to slowly but surely rip the mirelurks apart one by one until they all lay dead, and Bobby comes down to tell me that I'm her new hired gun, in that she needs me to head over to Diamond City and order some noodles, which is a bit of an odd request, but she is the boss lady, so I head over to the Power Noodle stand in Diamond City and speak with Bobby, who's disguised in a gas mask? Does this really work? They don't have any other way of telling she's a ghoul? Either way, she tells me I need to go break a man named Mel out of the Diamond City jail, so I head over there prepared for an elaborate heist, and I start by simply asking the guard to let Mel go, and that just works. Huh. Well, that was easy. I speak with Mel outside the jail, and he tells me to go meet with him and Bobby at the dig site, but before that, I decide to head over to the Colonial Tap House to do the Diamond City Blues quest, but there's really no point in describing me doing the quest right now, as at the end of the quest, I ran into a glitch where all of Good Neighbor, including Bobby, becomes hostile with me. This means I can't complete the Big Dig quest, but it also led to a funny moment where Bobby opens fire on me in the middle of Diamond City, only to get absolutely destroyed by all of the guards. But when I go to Good Neighbor, I realize they're all hostile with me, so I load back to a save before I broke Mel out of jail, and I go break him out of jail again. I'll come back to the Diamond City Blues quest later, but for right now, let's continue with the Big Dig. I head over and meet up with Bobby and Mel, and together we use Sonya to blow holes in tunnels and fight through mirelurks and ghouls. The combat throughout this dungeon is actually kind of trivial, as most of the enemies focus on fighting Mel or Bobby, allowing me to free fire at the irradiated rascals without any fear. After a long and slow firefight through the underground of Boston, we finally reach the final room alongside Bobby and Mel, and then have Sonya break through the ceiling into what Bobby has assured us is the Diamond City Strong Room, only to actually enter the warehouse of Hancock, the mayor of Good Neighbor. It's here where we find ourselves face to face with Fahrenheit, his personal bodyguard, and after a long conversation with her, I manage to convince Bobby to leave without violence. I then speak with Fahrenheit, who rewards me with the Ashmaker minigun. This minigun has the incendiary legendary effect, which adds a bit of fire damage to every shot, and although this fire damage doesn't stack, it's still nice to have over the normal minigun. Overall, it is a huge upgrade for me, and I plan to use it to replace the junk jet entirely. But in order to do that, I need to secure a steady supply of ammunition for the incredibly hungry gun. In an effort to do just that, I head off towards Sanctuary, only to be accosted by a raider. I decide to end him and draw first blood with the Ashmaker by shooting him in the ankle many times before making my way to the Red Rocket, where I quickly upgrade the Ashmaker with a sight and then spend a long while collecting junk so I can set up ammunition manufacturing at Sanctuary. I build a couple of generators, an ammunition plant, and a terminal to control it all, along with some automated storage. Now all I have to do is source large amounts of fertilizer and steel. The steel is a non-issue, as I can definitely scrap enough from pretty much any settlement and then bring it back to Sanctuary, but getting fertilizer is a bit trickier. Just to get started, I head over to Finch Farm and buy a ton of it, but in the future, I plan to get a few Brahmin to produce it while I'm out and about in the Commonwealth. One downside I've found with ammunition crafting is it doesn't seem to craft any ammunition unless I'm close to the machines, and since I had to sit here and watch it make a few hundred 5mm rounds, I figured I'd throw together this manufacturing montage for you. With my pockets overflowing with caps, I start heading back towards the Pridwin, and along the way I run into a woman named Kelly selling a Brahmin. Well, this is super convenient considering what we just spoke about, so I pay her 100 caps and buy her cow, sending it to Sanctuary, as I continue on my way to the Pridwin, where I speak with Maxon on the flight deck, who orders me to take Fort Strong for the Brotherhood, so once again, I jump into the Vertibird and start my rampage through Fort Strong. I kick it off by using the minigun attached to the Vertibird to kill off a legendary super mutant along with the Behemoth. The Vertibird lands, and I learn that I don't have to get out immediately, and I can just stay on the door minigun and mow down all of the super mutants that spawn after I land. So I do just that, splattering mutants across the entire island before things go quiet. With the outside cleared, I make my way inside Fort Strong, and the first few rooms go very well. I kill off a ton of mutants with little to no issue as the Ashmaker turns these Hulk wannabes into charred corpses with ruthless efficiency. Just a side note, you all have no idea how long it took to get that last line. Like, I've been sitting here for 10 minutes just trying to say that without messing it up, and holy crap, I didn't think that'd be a tongue twister, but it is. Back to the run, I take a nap in one of the beds before riding the elevator down, where combat gets a bit difficult as I have to fight a legendary super mutant that eats all of my ammo like it's nothing. I end up going through 800 rounds just to kill this one legendary mutant, only to end up dying to a missile-wielding mutant right after. I do end up dying one more time to this exact super mutant before taking on the basement of Fort Strong for the third time, and after a long-fought battle with the legendary, I once more find myself staring down the barrel of a missile launcher, but this time Nerd Rage kicks in at the perfect time, giving me enough time to avoid his missile and kill the last two mutants, silencing the once very loud fort. I then speak with Dance for a bit and ask him why he hates mutants so much before leaving the fort and heading to the Pridwin to speak with Elder Maxon, who gives me Vertibird signal grenades. I then immediately make my way over to Sanctuary to set up a feeding trough for my new Brahmin, and it's dead. If I find Kelly again, she's a dead woman. Well, I don't have the materials to craft a cage to catch a Brahmin right now, so instead I make my way out to Good Neighbor, and more specifically the Memory Den, where I get this funny moment where I tried skipping through Dr. Amari's dialogue too quickly, and she gets stuck with me just making random noises, and then when she finally speaks again, she tells me to speak up already. This made me laugh quite a bit, and I still giggle thinking about it. It's just the entire situation of, oh hey, come on, keep talking, and then whenever you finally shut up, she's like, well, speak up already. Either way, I then run through Kellogg's memories in the bog standard boring way until we find out the Institute uses teleportation, and with that I leave his memories and speak with Dr. Amari, where we come up with a plan to run into the glowing sea to find an Institute scientist named Virgil. With that, I make my way out to the glowing sea and start the easy march over to his cave, only to immediately die to a bunch of stingwings. It then sinks in that I forgot to save after going through Kellogg's memories, so I'm gonna have to do all of that again, and I go to do just that, sitting through his memories very bored, until I realize that I entered the memories in third person, and for some reason I didn't stay invisible, so here's a few shots of me just hanging out with Kellogg in X688 for no reason. This time, when I make my way out to the glowing sea, I save at these cabins near the edge of it, and then start heading off into the irradiated waste. And wouldn't you know it, I managed to get through all of the glowing sea, only having to kill one rad scorpion on the way to the cave before fighting the Deathclaw outside it. The fight with the Deathclaw is tense, but I managed to take down the beast without ever getting hit before entering the cave and speaking with Virgil, who agrees to help me get into the Institute, and the first thing I need to do is kill a courser. So, with a new objective on my list, I leave the cave, and before leaving the glowing sea, I make my way over and discover the Sentinel site for for a quest later on. I then call in a vertibird and head over to Diamond City, where I make my way into the Colonial Tap House and watch Paul get clocked by Henry. I then head outside the bar and speak with Paul, who agrees to pay me to go talk Henry out of sleeping with his wife. I go intimidate Henry out of being a paramour, and he offers to let me in on a plan to kill a rich kid and some chem dealers so we can take their caps and chems. I then tell Paul about the plan, and he agrees to help out. Along the way to the drug deal though, Henry and Paul get distracted by some super mutants, and Henry ends up dying. So I head over to the deal with just Paul and convince him to go in guns blazing as I back him up. I then have a long drawn out fight with all of the Triggermen, Rich Kid, and this ghoul woman, and in the end, it's not that difficult. I have a long conversation with the ghoul woman running the chem operation, and I let her live after she tells me how to bust into her chem lab and steal everything there for myself before speaking with Paul, who insists on taking a cut of the loot. I tell him I'm taking all of the loot and I'll kill him if he tries to stop me, and this guy just doesn't have a lick of intelligence as he pulls up his pipe pistol to fight the guy in a full set of power armor wielding a minigun. I kill him and get rid of the evidence by throwing him into the river before taking all of the chems back to Diamond City, where I do a huge selling spree of chems to give myself a nice stack of caps for trading. I then head back to Sanctuary as I've gathered the materials to catch a couple of Brahmin, so I set up the cage and sleep until it catches a Brahmin a couple of times before setting up feeding troughs for the 2 Brahmin. This should allow me to produce fertilizer while I'm out questing. With that sorted out, I head back to the Pridwin and buy minigun ammo from Tegan, and while I'm there, I go ahead and upgrade the Ashmaker with the Shredder mod, as my chat has been yelling at me to do it for the past 6 hours. And now that I finally have this upgrade, I'm probably going to ignore it because getting really close to enemies in survival isn't generally the best idea. Next up, I make my way over to Green Tech Genetics and start chewing through the gunners as I ascend the tower, and it was really satisfying to turn these mercenaries into mincemeat, so here's a montage.
What's going on down there? How many are we dealing with?
With the gunners cleared, I take on the courser, and it really just isn't even a contest at this point. I mop the floor with this invisible synth hunter, and while he lays on the floor bleeding out, I take his chip and kill the synth he was chasing, along with the rest of the gunners. I then loot as much as I can without being over encumbered before jumping off the roof of Green Tech Genetics. After that, I make my way over to the Old North Church and use the junk jet to clear out the ghouls, before using the decoder ring to spell railroad and speak with Desdemona. After revealing I have a courser chip, we head into the railroad headquarters where Tinker Tom decodes the chip for me. I then head over to Diamond City to trade, only to be accosted by Darcy, Paul's cheating wife. She ends up asking me what happened with Paul, and I told her that I murdered him. Finally though, we find someone from this questline who has common sense. She just runs away instead of fighting the power armor wearing, minigun wielding death machine that is me. I then head over to Sanctuary and do some crafting before boarding a vertibird teleported over to Virgil's cave, where I speak with him and get the plans for the signal interceptor. I then head back to the Pridwin, where I tell Maxon about my plan to enter the Institute, and he tells me to speak with Proctor Ingram to get the signal interceptor built. I quickly talk to her and then build the signal interceptor, as I had already gathered all of the junk I needed throughout the run. After building it, I have to go find Maxon, as I built it so quick he didn't have time to get from the Pridwin to the Boston airport. I then stand on the signal interceptor so I can wait for Ingram to monologue enough for me to teleport into the Institute. Once inside, I load the network scanner holotape into one of the terminals before riding a couple of elevators so that way I can speak with Synth Sean, then Father, then all of the directors of the Institute, ending with Dr. Lee, who I need to get to join the Brotherhood. I start off by trying to persuade her, but as this never works for me, she insists I find out what happened to Virgil. So I break into the Institute's old FEV lab and have a fun time mowing down turrets and this Assaultron alike. I leave all of them as burning scrap piles on the ground before continuing deeper into the lab, where I find a holotape for Lee. I return to Lee and give her the holotape, which convinces her to join the Brotherhood before returning to Father, who sends me off to go capture a rogue synth at Libertalia. I'm nearly out of ammo again for the Ashmaker, and I haven't been mentioning it, but I've been constantly heading to various settlements to trade because crafting and buying ammo for the Ashmaker is incredibly expensive. In fact, it costs 400,000 caps to fire this weapon for 12 seconds. Either way, what this means is I need to go restock before heading over to Libertalia. So I teleport out of the Institute and ride a vertibird back to the Pridwin to buy ammo from Tegan before making my way over to the raider-infested shipwrecks. When I arrive, I end up being attacked by a couple of Mirelurks, and in an effort to conserve ammo, I run over to X688 and let him fight them, but this almost ends very badly as I come close to dying before he manages to kill the Mirelurks. With that tense situation over, I sleep at a nearby bed and start trying to fight through these raiders. The combat isn't difficult per se, but I do end up dying a few times because there's a raider waster with a fat man overwatching the entire settlement, and while I'm very tanky in this run, I still can't eat a mini nuke to the face yet. Eventually though, I manage to fight through all of the raiders and kill the fat man one after he misses both of his shots on me, and then recover the rogue synth and teleport back to the Institute to speak with Father, who gives me a new apartment and task. I'm supposed to go reclaim 4 synths from the railroad at Bunker Hill, but instead I teleport out of the Institute and catch a vertibird over to the Pridwin, where I warn Maxon and refill my minigun's ammo. This quest is incredibly important as it's the first place I'm going to be able to get a guaranteed Gatling laser, so everything else is secondary. My main goal here is to get a Gatling laser off of one of the Brotherhood members who spawn. I make my way over to Bunker Hill and sleep to save before starting the battle by talking to the courser nearby. I then spend a long while enjoying the spectacle, and luckily there's 2 Brotherhood knights here with Gatling lasers. I go ahead and check the basement as there's a chance the knight down there can have a Gatling laser, and that would speed up this process a ton. Unfortunately though, this time he doesn't, so I head back up and get this awesome time lapse of the courser fighting one of these knights. It takes a nice long while, but eventually the knight dies and I get to grab his Gatling laser. This is the best weapon I can get in this run, so from here on I plan to use it anytime I'm struggling. Throughout this run, I've managed to stockpile over 30 fusion cores, so I highly doubt I'll be running out of ammo anytime soon. Either way, I head down into the basement and start killing off all of these railroad members, along with the courser, and eventually the synths in the back room. I wouldn't call the combat here particularly difficult, but I did nearly die to the railroad heavies, but luckily Nerd Rage saved my life. After turning the Bunker Hill basement into a makeshift mass grave, I head over to the roof of the CIT ruins and have a polite conversation with Father before returning to the Pridwin, where I give the network scanner to Ingram before she shows me one very disassembled Liberty Prime. She then lets me know that Dr. Lee refuses to help with Liberty Prime, so I head up to the Pridwin and talk with Lee. I eventually convince her to help with Liberty Prime, and after that I speak with the 2 eggheads who tell me to build some magnetic actuators for Prime, so I quickly run off and do just that before being told to go to the glowing sea to find nukes for the big boy's backpack. Before I head out to the glowing sea, I'd like to ask you all to consider liking the video and subscribing. If you've made it this far in the video, I'm sure you're enjoying yourself, and it really helps me out as only about 10% of you are subscribed. If you want to support the channel even further though, consider clicking the join button down below to become a channel member and gain access to all of my livestream VODs, alongside the ability to vote on future challenge runs. With that shill out of the way, here we are at the edge of the glowing sea, and it's immediately chaotic. There's constant laser and gunfire between the Brotherhood members and everything else in the area. I join in on the fighting, and hot damn, there are a lot of legendaries here. I end up killing multiple legendary enemies, and even finding a couple that just died on their own to Brotherhood soldiers. After looting all the corpses, I speak with Scribe Halen, and she gives me a beacon to place when I find the nukes. I then ride a vertibird over to the Sentinel site, and the combat here was so satisfying. There's just something about heavy weapons that's almost cinematic, so here's a montage. With all of the ghouls dead, I speak with a child of Adam named Brother Henry, and while I fail the first speech check, I succeed the second, and he gives me access to the nukes. I then place the beacon and go to leave, only to have this hilarious moment where a glowing one ghoul dies on the elevator ride down. I laughed for a while about this on stream, before heading back to the Pridwin where I speak with Ingram and Lee, who let me press a big red button to boot up Liberty Prime for the first time. Prime can't walk around yet, but he does a diagnostic before Ingram tells me to go report to Maxon. I go do just that, and he accuses me of hiding the fact that Dance is a synth from the Brotherhood. I tell him off and he buys it before telling me that I need to go find and kill Dance. I then speak with Proctor Quinlan about tracking Dance, only for Scribe Halen to burst in and yell at me. I then follow her to a secluded part of the Pridwin, and she tells me I need to hear Dance out and where to find him. With this new information, I head out to Listening Post Bravo where Dance is hiding and die to the turrets outside. Well, that was unexpected. I go at it again, and holy crap, these turrets hit like a truck and almost kill me again. That was tense, but I enter the bunker and kill off the Protectrons and turrets inside before speaking with Dance. He's hellbent on the idea that I should follow Maxon's orders and kill him, but I talk him out of his death wish and convince him to flee the Commonwealth. When Dance and I leave the bunker, we find Maxon is there and he starts yelling at us. After a long conversation, I convince Maxon to only exile Dance instead of killing him. After he exiles Dance, he tells me to report to him at the Pridwin as soon as possible. I then try and get on a vertibird to the Pridwin, but it just lands immediately? Maybe I hit E on accident? So I try it 2 more times and the vertibirds are just landing right after taking off. Well, since it ate 3 of my vertibird grenades, and this is very apparently a glitch, I decide to turn on fast travel and allow myself to fast travel 3 times. I start by heading over to the Pridwin and reporting to Elder Maxon. He assigns me Dance's position and gives me all of his possessions, and I find it hilarious that despite letting Dance live, I can still choose this dialogue option.
Body's not even cold, and you're already dividing the loot.
To the victor go the spoils.
Oh, Bethesda, you're silly. Either way, I speak with Kells and he tells me to go kill the railroad. So I fast travel over to the Old North Church and start fighting my way through the clandestine freedom fighters. At this point, the railroad just isn't a threat to me whatsoever. Between the power armor and my arsenal of weighty doom, I'm virtually unkillable by their small arms, and I decimate their forces so easily. The only real threat to me is Glory, but even she can't hold up in the face of the overwhelming firepower I bring to bear on her. Not too long after entering the church, I have wiped the railroad off the face of the earth, and with that, I head outside and back to the Pridwin, where I repair my power armor and upgrade it using the mods from Dance's set of power armor. With this, I'm ready to take on the final 2 quests of the game, so I go report to Captain Kells, telling him the railroad is gone, and he sends me to speak with Ingram, who tells me that she's coming with me to Mass Fusion to obtain a gizmo to power Liberty Prime. So I ride a vertibird over to Mass Fusion and use the door-mounted minigun to blow away all of the synths on the roof before jumping off the vertibird and grabbing the Mass Fusion ID, as well as checking a terminal to find out that the gizmo is in the reactor room, and with that information, I jump off the roof of Mass Fusion and enter the front door to avoid the elevator ride. I then kill a couple of synths before riding an elevator down to the reactor room, where I hack a terminal that allows me to fight a lot of the reactor defenses early. This includes 2 Assaultrons, one of which beelines to me, and it's a rough fight, but I do manage to fell the Assaultron, while the other chases Ingram up a ton of stairs. I use the terminal to deactivate the second Assaultron, and now that I think about it, should have just done that for both of them, but oh well. Either way, I kill it off before entering the reactor room and grabbing the gizmo from the reactor core. I then have to fight a sentry bot that is, quite honestly, a cakewalk to deal with, before making my escape from Mass Fusion. On my way back to the Pridwin though, I run into Kelly, the woman who sold me the faulty cow, and I kill her to get my revenge. I told you that if I saw her again, she'd be a dead woman. I then return to the Boston airport and speak with Ingram, who tells me to shove the gizmo into Liberty Prime's backport and press a button to bring him to life. I do just that, and the behemoth sparks to life. Prime tears himself from the gantry and starts a freedom-filled march towards the CIT ruins. I follow him and have some really funny moments on the livestream that I'm just gonna put right here. Protect me, Step Prime. Oh no! Oh no! Oh, that was scary. That synth had the, he was trying to go for Employee of the Year. He's like, I'm going down, but I'm taking the sole survivor with me. Does that actually blow up the bridge?
Overland travel to target. Compromise.
Oh, Prime, you're really getting close to blowing me up. Oh, are you stuck? Oh, come on, little buddy. I'll help you. I have been foiled by a small incline. He's dancing, everybody. Oh, everybody do the Prime. Don't. Everybody do the Prime. Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, this is great. I'm so happy. I'm so happy this happened. If you want to catch more moments like this, make sure to subscribe so you can catch me when I go live, or alternatively, you can join the channel membership program to view all the livestream VODs. After watching Prime do his mating dance, I make my way to the CIT ruins and watch him win a fight with the Earth before jumping into the hole his face laser and nuke made. I then start fighting my way through the Institute, and I run into a few legendary synths, but nothing here really poses a threat to me as long as I take it slowly and stay with Maxon. I turn so many synths into ash piles and get a nice little restock on my minigun ammo as the prototype sentry bot had 1,000 rounds on him. As we enter Bioscience, I'm feeling really strong and powerful as I continue to cut through synth, turret, scientist, and gorilla all alike. Once I finish clearing out Bioscience, I make my way into the main atrium of the Institute, and I was a little bit worried about this room when I was entering it, as the combination of a Courser and a legendary synth usually proves difficult to deal with, but fortunately enough, between me and Maxon with Gatling lasers and this knight with a minigun, we managed to delete the Courser with ease before I take on the legendary synth by myself, killing it without issue, and oh, That's a legendary Fat Man. I had been hoping to get a legendary heavy weapon all run long, and I finally do, only for it to be a troubleshooter's Fat Man. Arguably one of the worst legendary effects for the Fat Man, but I'm not complaining. I used the one mini nuke it gives me to blow away a couple of synths before making my way into Father's room to release the emergency lockdown. I then continue fighting through the Institute's Advanced Systems Division until I reach the reactor room. It's here where I get worried, as there's a legendary synth wielding a missile launcher, but by bravely letting the other Brotherhood members deal with him, I get through it unscathed, only to run into another legendary synth that drops a Poisoner's Flamer. Man, I really wish I had gotten this like halfway through the run, as it would have made things a bit more interesting, but alas, my legendary luck continues to be trash. Either way, I plant the bomb on the reactor and get teleported out of the Institute, where I press a big red button blowing up the Institute while answering the question, can I beat Fallout 4's survival difficulty with only heavy weapons? Yes, I can. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed, please consider liking, subscribing, and commenting a new challenge suggestion below. I'd like to thank my patrons and channel members, as their support has been tremendous. If you like this video, I think you'd like my last video where I try to beat Fallout 4 with only grenades. You all are beautiful, and this is Willow signing off.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep.